Oh, hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is David. Today we're going to continue our newspaper website using Next.js. This is going to be the full stack website. We're connecting to the MongoDB database and we are building this RESTful API with CRUD. Alright, so in the previous session we have finalized the home page with the hero section and also the post section as well. You can see all of these news items has been listed properly. And if you opened up your code editor and you look at your previous code, you will find this is the code that we write previously for the post. And if you go through them, you'll find that there's kind of a repeating and a messy stuff. Like for example, this one that has a lot of properties that has been injected over here because we need to define the data type for the item every time we try to map it. And here the same thing as well. And the same for the one that down beneath. So we have been repeating these things for nearly 3 times. And in a real project, this is going to be a very messy way of running your code and not very professional. So the first part in our session, I'm going to show you how to refactor this code or make this code a bit of cleaner and do not repeat yourself. Alright, so what we're going to do first is we need to extract this code out, including the curly braces, and you just copy that. And above that post, what we're going to do is that we'll create an interface. So we export interface. Interface is pretty much like a contract on a rule that a data structure must follow. All right. So you can create something like this to hold data structures, especially when you develop in React or Next project. You can use this interface to hold the property structures of the data. So we create an interface called the post props. And we actually don't need the curly braces because I already copied that. And we just copy and paste in those things that we needed. All right. With the ID, string, image, strings, we have defined these data variables inside the interface. Then later on, when you want to define the data again, you don't have to write all this messy stuff because you have that thing saved in a single place. This is also follow the principle of programming that is called the single source of truth. Alright, so say for example later on you want to change one of the data variable type. There's the only place for you to change is this post props. You don't have to go through every one of your code to change it. Okay, so that's it. And what we're gonna do next is to remove this definition here. You don't have to define a data variable type inside that bracket, which is very messy. And what you're gonna do is just to use that post prop. As you can see, this code becomes much shorter and much cleaner, right? And same thing for the one below as well. And this one, you delete that, and you're just gonna say post prop. And down here, we have the same thing. You're just gonna delete that. We say post prop. Okay, so now you can see this code is very readable because this list only contains a few lines of code. It's very easy to catch up the logic. We have that item to be filtered first, and once you have that, we change in the map method. We map the item, which is going to have the data type, a data variable type that follows the post props interface, and we map that into the training post component, which is very clear, right? So this is the way to write a proper code. And other things to do is that you will probably gonna see this arrow line over here, and if you hover your mouse on it, you will see that the empty curly braces is missing the following property, and because we haven't defined all of these things in a state variable over here, right? We inject an initial value for that item state variable with an empty object, and without including all of these definitions for the data type. So that is inappropriate. So I'm going to change the state variable a bit to make the things a bit proper. First, we don't need that. We delete that. And also, we do not need another data type for the use state. Instead, we're going to inject an initial value for the use state object, and we inject it in the curly braces in the end. So what we're going to do, we create a new variable above with a constant initial post, and we want to make sure that thing equals to all the properties that you have defined here must be matched with your initial value. So even though we do not know what ID is, what the image root is, what the category is, but we still have to define them with an empty string. Okay, so this is going to be an object that contains all of this property with an empty string value. Okay, so now we have that. We're just gonna inject this initial post as a beginning value of that use state hook, and now our item will have the initial post value with all this empty string value. And if you scroll down here, you will see that the error line goes away. Okay, So this is the proper way, a better way of handling things. So when you write your code, the skill will get improved progressively. First, you will be looking at your code to make the application work. And after you found the application is working all properly, you'll start to try a better and beautiful code. All right. So this is trying to make your code more maintainable, less messy, and more readable. Okay. So now I'm happy. So far, I'm happy with this template for the post page. And if you're going back to a localhost 3001, you are supposed to be on 3000, and you scroll the page, you will see that nothing changes. Everything's the same, but your code looks much better. All right. So this is our first step for the session. And our second step, if you look at this post item 1 component, you will see that this item has been injected as a property value to the child component. And if you opened up your post item 1 component, and you will see that previously we should have that long data variable over here, but now you can just write on your code to replace that one with the post props as well. And we can import that post props from the section post page, because over here we export this interface. When we export it, basically means that we share this interface all across the application. So each file and component inside this application folder or your project folder can actually import this interface and use it. So this is the beauty with it. All right. So make a bit of a change over here as well. And now if you look at your post item 1, it will look much shorter and much more maintainable. Okay, so there's two things we have done to do the refactoring of your page to make it looks much nicer. And we're pretty much done with the post one. The next job for today is that if you look at our second page of our website or our application, it's going to be in a list of all of the post items inside your database that we're going to list them, all of them on this page. And each one of them, we'll click on them. It'll take you to that individual page for the user to read it. All right. So our today's job is going to build this post page and also build that get single item page, this one. Okay. Let's just jump in and do it now. So to create a post page, what we're going to do is inside the app folder, just pay attention to, this is the source folder. You open up the source folder, you will have all this folder, and inside the app folder, you create a new folder called post items. So this is going to be the folder used to hold your post page. Maybe we'll make this one singular, so post items. And inside here, we create a new file called page.tsx. So this is the next way of creating a page route. So in the end, whenever you create your page routes, it's depending on your folder structure inside the app, and the route's name will be the same as your folder's name. Okay, so here we say RFC to have that boilerplate, and then to make this formal, we have to give the new name called post items. So now we have our post page. Okay, so that's the first step. The second step is to think about how do we build this page. We're going to first fetch data from the MongoDB database because we already have the get all routes that has been built inside our route folder. So for example, this one, this is the get all request. We make the request to the MongoDB database and we get all the data and store them in an array. And once we have that, we need to map those item arrays inside this post item page. Okay, so that's the logic. So firstly, what I'm going to do is to make this one a client component, and then I'm going to import a few hooks. One is the use state hook, the other one is the use effect hook. And once we've done that, inside this one, we create a new local state variable called items, which is going to be used to hold our JSON data from the backend. And we have the side items, and then this is going to be the use state. So initial value is going to be an empty array. That's all, right? So now we have this. And then second step I'm going to write is our fetch data API. So we say create a function called get items data, and that thing is going to be an arrow function. So we say arrow function, we're going to fetch from the backend. And you know that the backend that we designed, if you look at our postman, and we have that get all request. So the get all request will show you we're going to fetch data from the localhost 3001/API/postman. So if we fetch that, we can have all the data ready over here. And then this route structure is also determined by the API folder structure. /API/postman, which is exactly your folder structure. So all the name must be matched up. So we say backtick over here, /API/post items, plural. So once we fetch that, it's going to return us with a promise, and then we have to resolve that promise using the then chain. And we say the response, we're going to map the response into response.json. Basically means that we convert it into our JavaScript. And then we're going to change another thing, because we need to set our local item variable into that data. So we say data set items, which is going to be that data. Oops, I'm missing an arrow. Here we go. So that's pretty much it. And then one more last step is that when we resolve this promise, if it couldn't be resolved, we're going to catch some error. So if the promise got rejected, we say catch error, and then we're just going to console.log that error.message, like so. So that's pretty much it. Now we have our function to fetch the data from the backend. And one more thing to do is that we trigger the use effect hook. Basically means whenever this components get mounted on the DOM, we're going to trigger this data fetching function by saying get items data. So we trigger this one, and this is going to be dependency on the items. So whenever the items changes, we're going to refetch data again. All right. So that's all. That's how we fetch data from the backend. So now we have our data ready. The next job is to create our UI template to put those data on our DOM. And we say we create a main wrapper. Maybe give the ID of main as well. So we wrap everything in the main. And then inside here, we say section, give the ID, section posts. And I want to have a class name of the same thing, posts. And we're going to wrap everything inside this section. So the next thing is, because we're using the Bootstrap, Bootstrap comes with a container. So we say div.container and div.row. And the first things, we're going to wrap everything inside this row, and that's going to be our data mapping. So what we're going to do, we're going to first check the similar logic if the items has been ready. So because previously we need to wait until this promise gets resolved and the data gets set into our local state variable items to be able to map it into an array. Okay, so we say if the items are ready. If so, we're going to check again if the items.length is greater than 0. Basically means we're not facing the empty array. If both conditions get satisfied, and then we're going to do the ternary operator, and then to show the template of that item, the post items. If not, we're going to alternatively show the preloader. Remember, this is the logic that we discussed in the previous session. So the last bit must be the preloader. And then what we are missing is the thing inside the middle. Inside the middle, what we're going to do is to do the mapping. So here we say items.map. And over here, we're going to say items. Give the brackets, items. And remember, we have to define the data variable type, and because we are using the Typescript, and also we don't have to manually type every single property's data type, because we have that post props that has been previewed inside our section post. We can just import it like so, and now we can do the mapping. We're going to map our item into, again, we are using a div. And we say we want to create a wrapper with a column of, on the larger screen, we want a column 3, and on the middle screen, MD is going to be half of the screen, 6th column, and we assign the key to it, which is going to be item._id, and inside here, we're going to put in our post item 1 component, and we're trying to make it a small component. If you don't know what the post item 1 component is, please go back to my previous session, because we have built this component already. And we're going to make it a small component, so we set large to false. And we know that item, we give the item property, and we're going to assign our item value to it. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So we have the row, we do the mapping, we map all of our data items into this column wrapper, and inside the column wrapper, we have this post item 1 component. If the data is not ready or the data is empty array, we're going to show the preloader to the user until the data is ready to be presented on the DOM. Okay, so that's what it is. And now we have our page inside of post items. What we're going to do is going back to our project, just reload a bit. Let me see if I press the post button. And now we are in the post page. As you can see, everything has been loaded straight away in a very decent way. Okay, how come this page working straight away? And that is because, firstly, we have this route ready. You must have the route ready for the button to work. We have the localhost 3001/post items. You're supposed to be on 3000 because I'm running 2 apps at the same time. And also, if you look at the components folder, in our previous session, when we build a navigation, we have that link ref, right? We have this reference that has access to the navigation.link. This navigation.link, if you're looking at the data folder over here, to the data, and you will see that the post is linking us to the /postman. That's how we can get this page straight away. Alright, everything has been predefined and preset. Well done. And one more thing is missing. If you're looking at the original page, there's supposed to be a page title called post item list. But here on our new page, we don't see that. So what I want to do is to create another component. Close this one, and this one as well. So inside our component folder, I want to have a new file called page title.tsx. RFC, we have that boilerplate ready. And then at the same time, we create a new file called page title.css. Enter. So I'm going to put this thing back. So we say import /page title.css. Alright, we're linking these two together. And inside this page title, what I'm going to do is too close. I'm going to build that wrapper. So what we want to do is to pass in a dynamic title into this child component. So whenever the other page might use this component as well to set a new title. So over here, we must do the property destructuring of the dynamic title, which is going to be provided or injected as the property value from the parent component. So we name it title. And we know that this thing is going to be an object. We have to say a title is going to be a string. So now we set it, and inside our return, we're just simply going to return that title. Very, very simple. Okay. So here we say h3, and we give a class name called category title, and we say we just inject that title into this h3 tag. That's all. Just one line of code. And on our CSS, I'm just going to copy and paste in the settings for this title. Very simple. Transform uppercase, give them a letter spacing, font size, and font weight to be resetted. And we make sure that we have the correct margin and color as well. So that's all. And if you want a border bottom, you can leave it on. Otherwise, you can remove it depending on how you want it to look at. And let's first do not show the border bottom for now and to see how it looks. So we have the page title ready, and then we're back. Where do we put the page title? It's gonna be right above that item. So we must put a title first. So here we say page title, and we inject it. So now you can get to see this red curvy line underneath showing that there's gonna be an error. That is because when we build a child component, there's supposed to be a property given, right? That's called a title. But now in the parent component, we must set it by saying title equals to. Here we're just going to put in a string, call it a post items list, or whatever title you like. Okay. Once you've done that, we are now ready to go back to our page. And now you can see, just reload it a bit, and that thing looks much better. Okay. And if I remove this thing, say for example, I remove this bit, and now you'll get to see the underline, which looks not that cool. Maybe some page you want the underline to have to set up a clear boundary between the title and the content, but this one I just like to leave it on. The CSS is very flexible. It's up to you how you want to manage it. Okay, so now we have our post page done, and this is the home page, and this is the post page, and the home page again. So now you can see we have these two pages working all perfect. Okay, what's our next job? Our next job is to set up the individual page, because so far if we click on one of those post items, it gives us that route. As you can see, it takes us to the localhost 3001/post items/ID of the item. This ID is from the MongoDB, by the way. But we haven't built the individual dynamic page for each items. That's why it's showing this 404 not founding page. So our next job must be to build the individual item page. Let's just jump in and do it now. So to create an individual item page, what we're going to do is inside a post items, we create a folder called square ID. I must have the square. This will make this folder a dynamic router folder. So a dynamic router folder enables you to render a dynamic page and dynamic routes for each individual item. So, and inside the square ID, we create another file called page.tsx. Will be the same name as this one, but they perform differently. The one in the parent folder actually loads the entire thing, all the items, and the one inside the square ID folder actually give you the single item. Okay, and our next job is to say RFC to create a boilerplate like so, and then name it post item. And this post item is a singular, and if you can see the previous one, it also named the post items, which is plural, so that's different. Okay, so that's the first step. The second step is that we're going to make sure this one is going to be in a user component, client component. So here we say use client because we do have multiple interactions with the user on this page. And then we're going to say import.use state hook and also the use effect hook, and two things like so. Once we've done that, we're going to do a data fetching from the backend to get each individual item by their ID. So far, if you look at our app, if you click on one of those, it'll take you to that individual page, but it shows the handling error because I couldn't find a React component inside that. Let's see if I save this. Yeah, it'll give you an empty page, and then with that ID in the routes, the logic to build this page is to fetch the routes parameter, which is the ID, and then do the get request by this ID to fetch the item, the property, and put that property into our UI template into this page. Okay, that's the logic. And how do we fetch the ID? If I take this ID and go to Postman, and I try it, I just put this ID in, I send this request, you will see we have a status 200, and we successfully get an item of this one. And the reason is because in our previous video, our previous session, in the API folder, square ID, we have set up the root for the get single request, okay, based on the route parameter. But this is our backend, not our frontend. Now we are just doing our frontend job, which is going to use this backend to talk to the database and get item. Okay, that's the entire logic. Therefore, the next thing is to put in a built-in parameter and do an object destructuring called params. This is the Next.js built-in parameter. You don't have to declare it anywhere. It comes straight away whenever you have the child component. And then we're going to define it. Use this one to help us to get the routes parameter from the page. So we say params, and that one is going to be an object which contains the ID property, and ID is going to be a string. Okay, so it's something like that. And now we have it. We're going to create a local variable called ID, which is also going to be a string, and assign the params.id to it. So now we have the routes parameter stored in our local constant variable ID. Okay, that's our first step. Our second step is to create a local state variable. So we say const and item and set item, something like that. We say use state. Initially, it's going to be an empty array, so we say empty object. So we just put an empty object there for now. And the next thing is to think about how do we trigger a function to get this data. So we're going to use the use effect hook to trigger the data fetch function to get the data based on the routes parameter ID, which is this one as well. Okay, so we're going to have to write a function over here, and we say const get single post data. It's a long name, but to make things a bit clear, again, we make it a arrow function. Enter. And inside here, we write our fetch function from the backend. So we say fetch, and that's going to be backtick /API/post items. How do we know this backend routes? If we look at the postman, that's going to be our backend routes. Localhost, your domain /API/postman/ID. All right, this ID is dynamic, and same logic here /ID. We're going to make it dynamic by using this template literal in TypeScript, and we put in ID. Okay, this ID is going to be this ID. It's going to be the routes parameter ID. So once we have it, our next job is going to chain a then function to convert the data that we fetch from the backend into a JavaScript array, a JavaScript object. So we say response. We map that response into res.json, which is going to be our JavaScript, not JSON. And then we're going to set our local state variable. So we say data arrow function set item into that data. It's pretty much done over here. But if the promise gets rejected during the decomposition process, there must be some error. So once we catch that error, what we're gonna do is catch error. We console.log e.messages, right? So something like that. Beautiful. So now we have our data and we set our local state variable item into the backend data. How do we trigger this function? Again, we use that use effect hook. At the very beginning of this components get mounted on the DOM, the use effect hook will work and have that function triggered. Okay, so inside here we say get single data, like so. So now our function gets called and our local state variable will be set to that backend data based on that individual dynamic ID. Okay, so down this step, the next one gonna be very standard because we're gonna create a UI template to hold our single item page. If you look at the original project, you will see it comes in two parts. The left-hand part is bigger. On the right-hand side is going to be a narrow part which contains the sidebar, the popular posts and trending posts that will allow you to look at other articles as well. So we're going to create this one first because our single item will be eventually injected into the left-hand side with all the body and content. So here I delete the return, and inside it we create a main and give the ID of main as well. And inside here we say section, give the class name single post content, like so. And then we use that bootstrap container to wrap everything up. Inside the container we're going to have a row. Everything must be loaded in a row. First we're going to build the left hand side to load the body of our individual article, and we say div column MD middle screen, and we're going to give a 9 because you remember that one row contains 12 columns, and we're going to make the left hand side bigger, so we'll give the 9 column, and the right hand side will take the remaining 3 columns, and like so. And then we're going to give a customize the class name as well. Say it's going to be post content, and inside here we're going to have our single post, so we say single post, and inside a single post we're going to have our post meta, which is another div post metadata, like the post categories and post name or the post date, that kind of things. So first we build our post meta, and the first thing we want to show is the date. So we say span date or category. They share the same kind of logic, so we use the same class name. And here we say item.category. And now you get to see there's an arrow line underneath the category, and if you hover on it, TypeScript will remind you that property category does not exist on the empty object. The reason is because when we declare the thing, we declare it initially as an empty object, which does not contain all the property required for the item. And remember, if you're going back to our section folder, look at the post, we have this initial post build here. Remember to export it. If you haven't exported, you can edit now. You export your initial post property value. For every single post, initially it's going to have this empty string value for each of the property. All right. So once you export it, going back to your page, so here instead of writing this empty object, we just say initial post. So now this thing gets imported automatically. So you are using the one that you set up in your post page and your post section as the initial value for your state variable as well. It's reusable. Okay. And if you scroll down, you will see that the error line goes away. This is the beauty with the TypeScript. It's a very accurate and strict programming language. It removes all the bugs inside the JavaScript. If you do not have this clear declaration for the data type, people can manipulate it somewhere from the DOM. Okay. So now we have that one done. And the next things if I want to put in, if you look at the original design, there's going to be a dot between the category and the date. This dot is a separator, okay? And it comes from the bootstrap dot over here. So just copy that. If you go to bootstrap icon and just search dot, you'll find this one. And then here we just give a class name. We say mx-1 to make sure it has a margin, a small margin on the both right hand side and left hand side, and put in that dot. This error line is because we have to use the React class name, and that's done. Okay, and the last part I want to put it in spam. Let's say we put in the curly braces and date. So we say item.date. Date comes in as a string as well. And if you look at our project, you will see I reload it. It comes in like this. The date is actually in a very formal database format that contains the date, the time zone, and all the stuff. But actually, in real life, we don't want to show the date in this format. We're supposed to show the date in this more common format. How do we achieve that? Here, we're just going to have to do a bit of a transformation using the JavaScript. So what I will do, I will cut this bit, and I will create a new date inside, a new date object, and put a date in. Okay. And once we've done that, what we're going to do is to use another function called toLocal date string. So we convert this date into our string format, and that format is going to be English US, something like so. And now if we're going back, you will see our date has been changed to the format that we wanted, okay, which is really, really cool. And we've done that part. Keep going. And our next bit, below this post meta, we're going to build our next thing, which is going to be a h1 tag. And inside it, we want to load our title, but we do need to give a class name. We want it to be a margin to bottom of 5, which is the biggest margin you can have in Bootstrap. And we want to have the items.title access that one there. So if we can, we're supposed to see the title over here, which is really beautiful. It's reloaded a bit. Yeah, that looks cool to me. And below the title, what we're gonna do is to show our brief paragraph. And we will create a paragraph. And inside here, if you look at the original project, the first letter of this paragraph is going to be very big and are all wrapped by the remaining text words. Okay, so the way to achieve that is to create a class name. So we use a spam and call it the first character, like so. And then we're just going to put in our item brief here. If we look at our postman and you look at where is the lorem contained, the lorem is contained in the brief property. Okay, so we want the first the letter of the first words to be turned really big and load the remaining things. And back to our editor, we're just going to say item.brief. First, we're going to check if item.brief, that data is ready. If that data is ready, so we're going to do item.brief char at 0. To pick up the first letter, we use the char at, which is the character at. 0 means the index number. So the 0 index basically is the first letter. Okay, we have to do this thing. And then the next one, once we've done that, just open up a new line. We say item.brief. Again, we're going to check if item.brief is ready because we're accessing the string method of it. That's why we need to make sure the string is ready. If you write this bit straight away, you're going to encounter an error. The reason is because the data initially is going to be an empty string. You're going to have to wait until it's been filled with a string to be able to access the char add function. All right, the char add is a string method. You have to wait until the brief ready to be able to access that. This is just like a protection in case any bugs happen. And we say brief.substring 1. And if you do this, it'll give you, the substring 1 will give you from the first index and to the last index. All right, this is how the substring works. These methods are all JavaScript string method. If you are unfamiliar with this, you can just copy this name, get onto Google to see the way it works. Very simple stuff. So now we're supposed to have the paragraph like so. But we wouldn't be able to see the first letter get changed, and that is because we haven't put in the CSS yet. So far, what I'm going to do is go to our ID folder to create another one called style.css. And we want to import that thing back. So we say import /style.css. And I want to put in that CSS file here as well. So just paste in this one. And by the way, I have already shared all the CSS code, the entire CSS code for the project down the link in the description. So if you couldn't catch up, you just download the CSS file straight away and have a look. You can go through it yourself. It's very standard, simple stuff. And so here I'm just going to briefly go through them. So we'll make sure that our post content has a bit of a padding on both right hand side and the left hand side. Make sure it's adjustable, responsive on different screen size. Here is the setting for our first character, and we give them a float left, and also make sure the font size goes really bigger. And also the remaining things is just to set up the captions. This is the settings for the sidebar. We haven't go to that stage yet, but I already pasted in. When we come to the sidebar, I'll explain it. So now we should be ready, and then if we go back, you will see this one looks really, really nice. It looks pretty much the same as the previous one. Yeah, exactly the same. Okay, so now we should have it done for our body of our individual item. But if you look at the original one, that's a pretty long article, right? Supposedly one news article should be a bit of a longer, but since this is for the demonstration purpose and education video, in our database, I didn't write such a long article. If you look at our Postman, you will see I only write a brief paragraph, which is the first one that we used. The remaining paragraph for the article, I didn't set up any properties for it. So what I will do, I will use some static data, hard-coded data to fill up the space. However, in a real project, if you do want to have the entire article come from the backend, that's absolutely okay. You just need to create another property maybe and call it article body, and then give it a really long array. Each array contains a paragraph a string, and you're just going to map that array into our DOM. Okay, so that's a very simple logic. You can manage on your own. So what I will do here, I will fill in some hard-coded article paragraph just to fill up the space. In the real project, these are supposed to come from the database as well, but so far we just load it as a template. Okay, and after the first paragraph, the second paragraph, sorry, you will see there's an image coming back. Okay, this image actually is from the database because we do have the thumbnail. If you look at the post, we do have the thumbnail, and we can use that thumbnail again as an image inside our article. So what I will do here is after the second paragraph, we create a figure, and this figure will have a class name, and we give the margin vertical of 4, and that will load an image. So we say image. We'll have that source. The source of the image is probably from the our database, where we do have that image root in the database. So we say /$ and double curly braces item.image. Because if you look at our Postman, you will see the image has the roots in it. And this image is currently saved in our local file folder, in our public folder. In the real world, the genuine image roots should be stored not in the local file, should be stored in some online cloud drive. Say for example, you could use a Google product, a Google Drive product, or you could use the Amazon S3 bucket, something like that. All right, and then the database is used to keep that routes of the image. Okay, but we are building an education video, so we use our local roots instead of the remote one. In a future project, I might show you how to connect to a remote online cloud disk to store your image, but that's another story. So now we have the roots for the image, and then we give a class name. Not inside the curly braces. We give a class name over here, and the class name is going to be image fluid. So this is a bootstrap fluid class name, which will make the image automatically responsive. Okay, and the next thing is going to be a figure caption. I made a universal figure caption so that everyone can share it. And if you want this thing to be dynamic, again, just put it in the database. You can update the properties. Here, you can add another property, say figure caption, and then you can have that thing dynamic. Okay, but you know the logic of it. We can do the majority of the mapping, and majority of the data are dynamic, and these are used just purely to fill up the space. Okay, so now we should have the data at the image, and now you can see the image there. This image is actually dynamic because it's fetched from the backend routes. Okay, and someone might not like to use the default image tag. If you want to use something like the Next.js image, which is also going to be okay, something like that. So we say image, and oops, so image, and the second one we import from the next.image, next/image. If you want to use this one, that's going to be okay. How come it still show me the error line? Yeah, should be fine now. And we're just going to give a source. The source is going to be item.image, and also give a class name, image fluid. Okay, something like so. And now if we temporarily comment out our current image, and then if you're going back, yep, that's right. Whenever you use that Next.js image, you have to set up the width property. So we're going to give a width. So I look it up and fix the error for the image. So what you're going to do is put in the source, the directory of the image, and make sure you have the class name for the bootstrap. And also you can randomly give a number for the width and height, because after you put on this layout responsive, these figures really won't matter, because that'll make the image responsive and according to the class name of the bootstrap. And if you're going back to our application, when you reload it, that image is going to fill up the space, which is very similar to the one that we look at right now over here. Okay, so this is going to be the responsive one. Either way will do. You can use the original one, or you can using the Next.js image component, but this one has the built-in features of the lazy loading. Sometimes the image size can go really large, and it's going to take a while to be fully presented on the DOM. But the Next.js image component naturally comes with that lazy loading for the image. If you use this one, it's okay for you to build a simple project like this, but for the large project, you might see the page is keep running, just loading all the images, which is very time consuming and looks so ugly. So a proper way to solve the problem is still use the Next.js image component. Well, just my idea. It's up to you how you want to manage your image. Okay, so now we have that image done, and the remaining things is to fill up another 3 paragraphs, hard-coded paragraph, and this is going to be filled up our space, purely to fill up our space, otherwise our page will look so short. So below the figure, I put in those 4 lorem paragraph. And again, I know I'm lazy. I didn't edit this paragraph inside our database. I hard-coded. And yeah, for this project, we just do it for an education purpose. Again, if you want to do the paragraph in a dynamic way, like what I said, I'll show you one example. How you can do is inside. I use the postman. So here I'm just gonna write a body and row. I write a bit of a JSON. So say for example inside a JSON you want to have another paragraph. I have to give that a double quote, or say the content. And this content is going to hold all of your paragraph. You just need to give a array. Make sure it's gonna be an array inside the content. And over here you're just gonna say for example, this one. That's all going to be our first paragraph. Okay, so inside this one, you will have your first one. Put it in. That's going to be your string inside your array, the first string inside your array, and then maybe you will have another one, something like so. So you will hold this paragraph as a string inside an array. All right, do not put them separately, because you don't know how many articles, how many paragraphs your article will have. So if you set up a property like a paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, that's going to be so silly. Because what if your article got 10 paragraphs, all right? And your property won't be enough to hold all the paragraphs. But if you store your article paragraph inside an array, the array is manipulatable. Okay, once you have a new paragraph, you just need to push that into your array, and your database gets extended straight away. All right, so that's the way how you can handle multiple paragraphs of an article using the array structure instead of a object structure. Okay, so I just show you this as an example. So if you like to do so, you can have another property here called contents, and use that to hold all the array. Once you have the paragraph in the array, and when you make the request to the backend, this thing will come back as a JSON, and the JSON will convert the contents eventually into JavaScript array that contains all the strings, right? Once you have the JavaScript list or an array, you're just gonna do a mapping. So this 4 paragraph will be like a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a repeating job. So that JSON content will be mapped into this paragraph and loaded on the browser. Okay, so that's the logic. Do not do it in a different property way, that's going to be very, very prolonged way of building your application. Okay, so I show you how to do it. If you're interested, you can have it done on your own time. So now we are back. Once I saved it, going back to our article, you will see this space has been beautifully filled up with the remaining hard-coded paragraph and also the image loaded in the middle. Alright, we're pretty much done for our single post item page, the left-hand side. And now we are going to jump into our right-hand side to build the remaining sidebar, which is going to be our popular post item and also our trending post news. Let's just jump in and do that now. And before we start the sidebar UI template, I want to show you one thing that is quite important in app development. If I show you this item single page and I reload it, and you will see the image has some, maybe it takes a half second to load the image, and you will see that the data is not ready, and it's going to take half second before the contents gets loaded on the DOM. Alright, this is pretty ugly, and it's not very professional. If I look at my original project, once I refreshed it, the spinning circle will spinning for like half seconds before the contents gets loaded on the browser, right? So this is the proper way of handling the data loading. Again, in this project, we're going to use a very simple way to handle the data loading. In the future project, I'm going to show you a more professional way. But to solve this issue is quite easy, because in the previous video, the last bit, we have built a preloader, and which can be used to show that loading animation. There's only one thing we're going to have to change to achieve that. I want you to close the tag for all the single posts, because here we load everything for the article content. And I want you to cut it. We're going to write a bit of a JavaScript ternary operator inside here. First, we're going to ask if the item is ready, right? We have to wait until the item is ready before we can show the content. And if it's ready, we're going to show the single post. Otherwise, we're going to show the preloader. So we say preloader. And we put a single post inside the bracket here. So in this way, we actually give a chance to have the data loaded and to be presented on the DOM. And one more thing you're just going to have to add is that make sure you add additional conditions, say item.category that's not equal to the empty string. This could be anything, because remember, when we first set up the item, we have the initial post status that comes from our post. All the things have been set to an empty string. So if the data is ready, basically means that these are not supposed to be empty, right? Especially for the ID or the image root, these are compulsory property that each item must have. So what we did here is check that we make sure that the item's category is not an empty thing, or you can use image or you can use ID, both will do. And if it's not empty, we're gonna load our data into our DOM. Otherwise, we're gonna show the preloader to the user. This is going to be the ternary operator. Okay, so once you've done that, and you're going back, you reload, you will see this reloader spinning effect, right? You will see this preloader is spinning, right, for maybe half second before the data is ready. But the beauty with it is that the actual data of the article won't be shown to the user before it's ready, right? If your internet speed is really bad, or your location is really bad, or something wrong with the server, the spinning circle will be shown forever. At least the user will know there's something wrong with the connection, and they will do something. Otherwise, it will crash your app. Okay, this is the proper way of doing things. We have done it. Beautiful. So now we have pretty much finalized this part for the single post article. And what I want to do now is to close off this post content, the 9 column, and below it, we're going to create another bit for us to show the side menu. So down beneath, we create another 3 column, which will take the remaining row. So we say div column hyphen md hyphen 3. So this will take the remaining 3 and add up together. This will be 9 plus 3 equals to 12. Okay, and inside this 3 column, we build our side block, and that's going to be our div aside block. And inside it, we're going to create a list. This list will contain our tabs. Because if you look at the original design, the popular trending, if you have more, that's going to be okay. These are called tabs. Whichever tabs that you click on is going to trigger the content being stored under that tag. Okay? So we must build a list of the tag first. But this list of tag is not supposed to be hard-coded. I want to show you the animation using the JavaScript. So what I will do first is I will create a tab data and map that tab data into our tab UI. So right above, over here, we say const tabs data, and that one I want to create it as an array, and inside it I will have all the tabs that we have. We'll have the ID 1 tab, and we give the name, which is going to be popular, and then this one is going to be an active of true that has been set by default, and the second object contains our second tab, which is ID 2, and that name is going to be a trending, and I want to set that active to false by default. Alright, so we have our tabs data comes in as an array that contains a JavaScript or TypeScript object. The beauty of this way is that in the future, if you have more tags, you can just add it in straight away. And if you want to have this thing stored inside your data file, say for example, the best way is to store in the data file. By the way, you can put it here, right? Just export the tabs data over here, and then you can use it. But this is only few lines of code. I just leave it in the same page. If you store in the data file, the beauty with it is that there's a single source of truth for you to manipulate data, the static data of your app. Later on, if you have any modification or changes to the data, you just have to update this single file, and everything else you don't have to touch it, which is really great. Okay, so but we can leave it here for now, and we're going to use this one for mapping. We map it down here inside our aside block into our tab. And the way to do so is first we're going to set a local state variable. Another one, we say the const tabs, set tabs, and that one equals to use state. We use this hook, and we load the tabs data as the initial value, like so. And once we have that, we have the local state variable tab. We do the mapping with that one. So down here, we're going to write a JavaScript to load our local state variable and map it into our tab template. This is quite simple. We say tab dot map. Again, it's going to be the JavaScript higher order array function, and we say tab. Each one is going to be mapped into our template list, and we'll give the list item with a class name of nav item, like so. And we have to assign a key, and that one needs to be unique, so we use the tab.id as the key of it. And inside here, we're going to do a button, so we say a button, and inside the button, we're going to hold our tab's name, tab.name, like so. So now we have that tab has been mapped into our list button. So if you look at our current project, it's supposed to be there. Yeah, we have the popular, we have the trending, everything has been listed over there. But the format doesn't look so correct. So what I will do, this list is supposed to be wrapped inside a UL. So I will wrap them inside a UL as well. So inside the UL, we hold all of this list mapping, and I want to give that a list, a class name. We call it the nav, and the nav pills. This is all the bootstrap class name, and we say this is going to be a custom tab nav, and we want to have a margin bottom of 4. So once we have that, and we're going back, you will see this thing looks horizontally much better. Okay. And inside here, I want to give a class name to the button as well. So we say class name, and I want to conditionally render this class name because if you look at the original one, the active one will have the underline below it. The non-active one will not have that underline. So we have to show the active status of each tab. So here inside the class name, I'm going to do the conditional rendering. Have to put a JavaScript first and then backtick. First, we give a customized class name called navlink, and after that, we're going to conditionally render that active class name by a ternary operator. We say tab.active. We're going to check if it's true. If it's true, we're going to show the class name of active. Otherwise, it will show class name undefined. So in that way, we'll conditionally render this active to the class name. And now if we're going back, you will see that it's been correctly loaded. And the reason is because in the CSS, we have predefined the nav link style. Okay, but these things are not clickable so far because we haven't created a function to enable the click events. So our next job is to create a function for the button. So when a user click on it, it can actually change the active one. So here we're going to create a onClick events to that button and write a function over here. Below that local state variable, we're going to create a function called handle tab active, and that one is going to equal to create an arrow function. We must take the ID of the tab to know which one to be triggered to active. So we take the ID, which is going to be a number as a parameter, and this one, eventually we're gonna do a mapping. So we say tabs data dot map. We want to take each tab and create a function, map each tab. First, we're gonna set the active status of each tab to false. So all the status set to false will remove the underline. That's the purpose of this line. And then we're going to check which one the user have just clicked on, and we say tab.id triple equal to the ID. So this tab.id is when we do the mapping, we're going to check the ID of each tab. If that equals to the ID that has been passed in as a parameter, basically means that we have found the one the user has clicked on. We're going to set specifically the active status of that tab to true. So this is how we handle it. And once we're done the mapping, we're going to just return the tab. Okay, so that's how you write a function. So now once you're done the mapping, you're going to end up re-update your status. So a traditional way is that you create a new variable and re-update your tab by assigning that a new variable in. But I'm going to do it in a fancy way, but cut this bit by just saying set tab. In the parentheses, I put the entire function in and remove that semicolon. I think it should be working in the same way without any problem. So what it does is that we've done the mapping, we reset the active status, and in the end, we're going to update our local state variable tab to the new status. All right, everything has been done in a very smooth way. So we've done the function, and to make it more accurate, we can write this function void. So the way the function works is that the parameter you have to define the data type, and the function you have to define the return data type. Because this function just do a reset of the local state variable, it returns nothing in the end. This return is inside the block function. It doesn't mean it. So at the end of the day, the function returns nothing. So we say void over here. All right. Once we've done that, we copy the function name and we go into the button. And for this button, we're going to create a onClick events. OnClick, and inside here we trigger another function, but we must put in the ID as the parameter. So we say tab.id inside here. So now whenever the user trigger it, this thing will be shown differently. So let's go back. If I click on it, just reload the page. Yep, as you can see, this underscore gets changes automatically whenever I click on the one. Because whenever I click on the button, that one will be set to active. Only the active one will have the underscore. Okay, so this is working so fine. One job is done. The other job is that we need to load the data, a list of the articles under different tabs. Okay, and then our next job is to build our content under each tab. And to do so, we're going to make another request to the backend. As you can see, here we are listing all the post items relevant to that category or relevant to that tab. So it's actually a batch fetching. It's not fetching a single item, we're fetching all the items from the backend. So here, instead of writing the single one, this is the get single post data, we have to write another one to fetch all the data from the backend. And I already write this get post data in our post before. So what I will do, I'll go to post. This is our get item data. So what I can see, I'm just going to copy this bit, put it back, and load it over here. And also here we have this aside items, which is going to be the local state variable. So over here we say const items, set items, and that one equals to use state. Initially it's going to be an empty array, which is okay. So now we have that data ready. Also, in our use effect hook, instead of calling that get single post data only, we have to call this one as well when the thing gets mounted. So we call two things. And now we have that items data ready. So we're okay now to put our item data inside our tab. So below that, navigation, we create a new div over here. We say div, this is going to be our tab content, like so. And we're just going to create another div, and this one is going to be called tab pane, like so. And inside it, we're going to think about the issue is when we on this tab, we show 6 items. When we on the other tab, the first 6 items will disappear, and we load another further elements on the new tab. How do we do the swap between one tab to another in terms of the content? And the way to do so is that we have to use the state to show it. Okay, we have to check which tab is actually active. If that one is active, we're going to do one type of data fetching. If the other one is active, we're going to change our way of data fetching. Okay, so here we have to write, instead of the tab pane, we have to write a ternary operator. Using a template literal. So we put that static class name in, and we say this one is a fade. And after that, we're going to first check which one is active. Okay, so we say tabs. If the first tab is active, that one is true. We're going to show this content. So we say show active. Otherwise, we don't show this thing. Okay, it's quite simple logic. Because we are writing the list of the articles for the first tag, if the first tab is active, and then we're going to show the active class name, and this one will be presented on the DOM. Otherwise, it will not be active. The entire content will be hidden. That's how we handle it. Okay, and inside this div, we're going to do the mapping, and we're going to say items. We're going to cut the array of the item and present only few of them. If you look at the original project and you go to post, we got quite a long items. We're probably going to have, let's say 12 or 16 items to be presented on the DOM, and we only want 6 one at a time. So here we say slice. We just cut a slice of it. We want 0 to 6 to be mapped on our DOM. So here we're going to say chainit.map, and that's going to be our item, which is going to be a data type of the post prop. So we have already defined this in our section post, so we can just use this straight away, and we're going to map it into our template. And that template, if you look at the original one, it's going to be a special format. Okay, so this is another component that we have to build as a subcomponent or the child component, because they all look similar. We have to build in this way, and we can call it a side post item. So what we're going to do here is to create a child component inside the component folder, and we call it a side post item dot tsx rfc. We have that boilerplate ready. I'm going to close off this use case file for now, and now we have that one. So our mapping job is to map our data into that side post items. So now we have it done. Okay, and to pass in, we need to have the key assigned to it. That is going to be the item dot underscore ID, and then we're going to pass the item as the property to that child component as well, like so. Okay, but so far you can see this error line because inside our child component we haven't defined it. So what I will do here, we take that property value and we have to define it. Item is going to be a we use that to post the prop as well. Again, post the props. Yeah. So once we define that and going back to the parents component, you will see that error line goes away. Okay. So this is the Typescript. It's very accurate. And once we're done the mapping, if we're going back to the app, you will see this thing has been listed for 6 times, and that means our data fetching is successful because we only cut off 6 items from the data array, and we map it our mapping should done repeating for 6 times. And if you look at our child component, it only have 1 line of words. That's why this thing gets repeated for 6 times. Okay. The next job is going to our this child component template to create it. So instead of returning that 1 word, we would say div, give the class name called post entry -1, and we want to have that border bottom as well. And inside it, we'll say div post meta to have that category and date stored. So here we'll say a span, give a class name of date, and inside it, what we want to store is actually the category. So we say item dot category, and change on the next line. Again, we're gonna add on that dot separator. So we say span mx-1, and we go to Bootstrap to copy that one in again, and we change this one to class name. So we have that separator done, and the last thing is going to be our date. So here we say span, and inside this, we're gonna have our new date to pass our date item. So we say item dot date. Oops, it looks like I wrap it with the parentheses. I'm supposed to wrap it with the curly braces, so it will be the JavaScript. And in the end, we're going to transform it to local date string, and using the format of English-US, or you can use any other format if you like, just depending on your location and your convention. Okay, so now we have that thing done. And below it, we're going to create a h2 tag, and I want to have a bit of a margin to the bottom, so we say mb-2, and inside it we're going to hold a link. It will allow the user, once you click on the title, it will take user to that individual page as well. So we say link from next link, and this one we're going to close that off. Inside we have a href that will give the user the route to go. To go to individual page is going to be the post items slash the money sign items dot underscore ID, and also we want this thing to hold the title as well. So inside the links tag, we want to have item dot title. All right, so that's pretty much it. And the last bit is we're gonna check, write a JavaScript item.author. If that exists, well, some article might be anonymous without an author. If that exists, if we do have an author, we want to say render a span, and in the span we give a class name called author, and the margin to bottom of 3, and it's going to be display block. And in between, we're going to display the item's author's name. So item author, right? Like so. So we're going to check if the article have the author's name. If it does, we're going to render the author's name. Otherwise, this thing won't show. Okay. So now we have our template for our site post item. And the next job is going to check out if this thing can be rendered correctly. So what I'm going to do, we go back and just reload it a bit. As you can see, all the items has been reloaded correctly on the page, except with a tiny issue that our images goes too large, that actually overflows a bit of the side menu. And my original project uses the conventional image tag to load. It's probably working a bit better. So what I will do is on our page here, because this layout response probably going to extend the image to the whole size, and I'm just going to still use the original one. Open up this one, and then I go back, you will see, yeah, this one gets loaded correctly, and the image is in the right position with a space on the side. So our popular gets to show 6 articles, and this one does not have the author, this 3, so the author won't show. Beautiful. Okay, if it does have the author will be listed beneath. If we go to trending, there's nothing there, but this one will be hide as well, as you can see. So now, let's just build up the content for our next tab. This is the tab 1, which is the index 0. The next one will be tab 1. So the easiest way for me to do, let me just think about what I would do. I'll just copy this and paste it below. And in the real project, here I just done it in a very lazy way by using a slice to cut off a part of the array and map it. And you can do filter here, because what it's supposed to show on a different tab is based on the tab's name. Alright, so if you look at our data, if we do have that trending or popular, I didn't set those properties for the tag. But if you do have the properties for the tab, you can leave it here, and you can do a filter based on the property for the tag, right? So if the tab is popular, you're gonna filter that out and only list those items with the popular. And if the tab has a property of trending, and you can do a filter and only list the trending item. Okay, so that's the logic. But this one, we're gonna change it to 1 because we are now using a type item 2. The type item 2 will have an index of 1. And we don't want the 0 to 6, we actually want the 6 to 12. So we only want to list 6 at a time. The remaining code are going to be the same, right? So this is just very, very handy stuff. So now we changed it. If we're going back, you go to trending, you will see the remaining 6. And you back to popular, that's the first 6. Yeah, at least that give you the animation, right? You want to make these things work perfectly, you just have to do a filter here to find out the actual item you need for that tab. Okay, so that's one of the things. And the last thing is going to be our aside block, which is going to show a video over here. This video is probably going to be an introduction of your newspaper web, or some trending videos that you want to put here periodically. So what I will do, I'm just gonna put in my code. First, I'll go back to close off this aside blocks. So the structure is inside the right hand 3 columns. We're gonna have the first aside block, and then I'm gonna put in another aside block. This one will be used to hold our video. It's just very simple stuff. So I just copy and paste in with that image routes, with that video. You can put in your URL here if you want to link the user to open up the YouTube video or any other website video. That's gonna be okay. So once we've done that, we're going back. You will see that video's there. Just reload. It's still there. You change the tab, it wouldn't affect the video because it's a separate block. Okay. So now we have pretty much done all the things with our single page, except the 2 buttons. If you look at here, you will see that we have this edit button and we have this delete button. What I'm thinking of is that we need to create 2 more routes for these things. The update button is actually going to be a put request, and the delete button, once we click that, is going to be a delete request that will remove the item from the database. So we're going to create 2 more routes in our API to talk to the database, and once we've done that, we can achieve the functionality of this 2 button. Let me just show you right now. So to create that put request and also the delete request, what we're first going to do is to go to our API folder, and we're going to find this square ID folder. Inside here, you already built a root.js, open it up. Previously, we only have 1 route, which is the get by ID route. And now we're going to build a few more routes. One is the put routes, and the other one is going to be the delete route. So let's build the put routes for now. So get onto this line, and we say export. It's also going to be an async function, and we're just going to name it put. So here we're going to take the parameter of request, and the data type is also going to be a request. And also, we're going to have the route parameter coming from the API routes, and that is going to be the param, which is a built-in parameter. And we want to deconstruct it and also define the data type of it. So params, and that is going to have, it's going to be an object which contain ID property, and ID is going to be a string, like so. So now we have that parameter set up, and the next thing is going to be doing a request to the backend to find which item we are going to update. We have to know the ID to be able to update the item in the database. And ID will be passed in the routes as a route parameter over here. So what we're going to do is to take the request body, and we say updated item, and that thing is going to be await request.json. So what this step does is that we take the request from the body, this one, that's the user's request, and we convert it into the JavaScript object. And then we're going to do a try and catch, because we will try to find this item by ID inside the database and update the original item with this updated item. Okay, so that's the logic for the put request. So we do a try catch block, and here we're going to find the original post item by ID, and we say post item, and that one equals to await. We have that module. If you haven't know how to build this data schema or module, please go back to my previous video, which is a session 1 video. I have the details illustration about how to set up database connection and how to create a data schema. All right. And here we use the Mongoose language to query the MongoDB by saying find by ID and update. This is the Mongoose, and we have to pass in the ID, which is the params.id. And then once we've done that, we pass in the new object that we want to update, right? The new object that we want to update for the original one is the one that we get from the user's request. So here we just say we want to copy that in using the spread operator by saying ... updated items, like so. So this is to say that we're trying to copy the existing object and pass it in as a parameter to update the original object inside the database that we queried by ID. Okay, so this is what we did. And once we've done that, we have to know that if we are okay to make this update. So we have to write an if statement here by saying if we couldn't find that kind of a post item, basically means that the user might pass in an invalid ID, or this ID is not available. It's a bad request, right? And then if that's the situation, what we're going to do is to return a JSON response by saying that this is going to be a client-side error. We couldn't find this item by your ID. And we're going to say return a new response. And inside here, we say JSON stringify, and we manually pass in our message and convert it into a JSON by the JSON stringify method. So we say message no item found for this ID, the same as above, the get request. And then the next step is going to return a for status. So here we say status for basically means that we're trying to find the ID of an object inside the database and update it with a new one. However, the user has been sending a bad request because the ID is invalid. There's no such ID that could be found in the database, and we return with such a message. All right, and if we can do this, basically means that we are okay to make the updates, and this if statement will not be executed. Only the above one will do. All right. And also, during the decomposition of the promise, there might be a situation where we encounter any errors. If there's any errors, we have to tell the user there's going to be some server error. We're currently unable to handle this asynchronous operation. So in that situation, we'll say return with a new response. And inside the response, we're also going to use the JSON.stringify, and by saying there's going to be a new message, and that message is a server error. So this means that it's not a user's error. The user sent the correct ID because we have passed the check. However, maybe the internet got disconnected or the server is down on a temporary basis, and we still wouldn't be able to return any response based on the user's request in the ID. So we have to respond with the user another message, which is a server error, and the server error also has its own status code, and that is going to be 500. So here we say status colon 500. This means that we pass in this warning message saying that the user has some problems, maybe try another time, something like that, right? So this is going to be our put request. And once we've done that, I just want to give a try in our postman over here. So I opened up the put request by ID, and let's try one. Say for example, this one, the first one, and it's going to be the 11 work from home part job. Let's see. This one is 11, right? And we copy that ID to see if we can make the update to this one. And we go to the put request. Here, we just want to put in that ID number. And inside the body, we're going to rewrite our the body of our request by sending off the JavaScript object. So what I will do, I will copy and paste in the original one. For that one, this is 11 work from the home part-time jobs, and now I want to change this one to 15 to see if it works. Let's create a new put request. It pops up with an error that says a server error, internet error. Let me just double check what's going on there. Maybe some typos in my code. Yeah, I have just looked it up. I forgot to return the proper message. Here we did the update of the database, but as a response, we have to let the user know that your update has been done successfully, but we didn't do so. So I just have to put in this return. Remember, this return of JSON response is under the if statement. Only if we couldn't be able to find the item inside the database, this if expression will be executed. Otherwise, the program will pass this part straight away and go to the next one. So the next one is going to be our proper return message if everything has been done successfully. So we have to here to say we're going to pass back a new response, and inside it we say JSON stringify, and we're going to stringify that post item, which is the one that we have just updated and fetched from the database by the ID. And then once we've done that, we have to pass in a new message here. First, we're going to declare the headers, and the headers is going to be a content type. So we say content type, and that is going to be application/JSON, like that. And then the next one, we're going to have to pass back the status. So the status is going to be 200. Basically means that our put request has been done successfully. All right. So once we've done that, we shouldn't have any problems. And now I'm going back to our postman, a same ID for that object, and I change this one to 15. And I make another put request. As you can see, this thing has been popped back successfully. We're on the status of 200. Okay. And we should have that thing updated in our database. So let me just go to our localhost of 3001 and reload this page to see. Yeah, this, as you can see, this text has been successfully updated to 15. All right. So here I would say to have that response straight away. Yeah, it's okay. Just leave it like that. So this is how we do the put request using that API endpoint. And the next job, we have done this put request. We do need to have a button here that will allow the user to trigger the put request form, because the users do not have the access to Postman. This is our, as a programmer or developer, that we can have the access using this thing to test out our API. The user doesn't have this, but what they have is that they need a UI template to update the form. So we need to create another UI template that allows the user to create or put, or update, or delete their existing posts. Alright, so in that situation, we have to create another route for the user to create or edit the existing post request. Let me just show you right now. So to create a page for the post request and a put request, let me show you. Like in my original project, if you click on the create post page, it will take you to that form with an empty form that you can fill up the content of the new post. If you go into an existing post, and then you click on the update button, it'll take you to that similar form but with the old content filled up, and now you can do all the modifications and updates over here. Okay, so we have to create something that will allow the user to create and edit existing posts. How do we do that? And open up your code editor. Inside this app folder, we already have one route for the post items, and now we need a new route. So we say create a new folder, and that folder's name is going to be create post items, post item, yeah, something like that. And inside this folder, we create a new file called page. So this page will be used to create a new post item.tsx. And we need another folder inside this create a post item folder, and that is going to be in a square ID folder. And this square ID folder will be handle each individual post items updates. Alright, so if you want to update each individual post item, you have to go to this square ID folder and create a new file called page.tsx. But they are doing the two different things. This one is to create a new post, a brand new one. This one is to edit the existing one. Because we have a dynamic route, we have a multiple IDs that has been pre-stored in our database, and you have to fetch the ID first and then do the updates for that ID item. All right. So we create a folder structure first and close this off. The next thing, we're gonna do some editing to our create a post page, and we create a template called RFC. We have that boilerplate ready, and I know this is going to be an interaction with the user, because if you look at create a post, the user gets to fill up all the details over here. This is a taking the input from the client side, so we have to make it a client component. So use client, and then we know that we're gonna link in those use state hook and also the use effect hook. All right. So the next job is going to be for us to create a local state variable and set up the template, because whenever the user trying to fill in this creating post form, it's going to be the input tag. All right, we're going to have a lot of input box over here and also the text area as well. So to handle the text change, we need to create a local state variable to do that. And what I'm going to do is to set up some initial value for all of the form text, the text form. So the initial value will be like the initial state value. We have the title, the image, the category, the author, the brief, and the validate. The validate is for a simple form validation. Okay, and another thing to do is to create a local state variable. So we're going to have const text and a set text, and this one is going to be the use state hook. And inside here, we just put in that initial state value as the beginning value of this text form. Okay, and I also wanted to this component name. Let's say this is going to be the create post item, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And the next thing to do, inside our template, I'm going to delete the original one and create our own template. So we say we're going to have a main with ID of main as well, and inside it we're going to create a new section and give the class name called create post content, something like that. And inside here we know that we're going to have the container, so we say the bootstrap container, and inside the container normally we will have a row, so we say div.row, and also we want to make the display to be justified in the center, so we say dflex. This is a bootstrap flex display class name. Once you type this, you don't have to set it up in the CSS file. So justify content center, so something like that. And once we've done that, we're going to use the column to wrap up our content. So we say div.column. We give a large string of column 10, like so. And inside it, we want to have a title for the page as well. So we say create another row, and inside this row I also want the display flex, justify content center, and I'll give a margin to the top of 5, like so. And then inside another div, we create a 12 column to wrap up the title, and inside here we're going to have the row, and eventually we're going to have the title, which is the div dot margin to bottom, give a 5, and inside it we're going to have a h1 title and give a class name of title, and we'll say create a new post. Later on, if you want to make this one reusable, you can wrap this title part as a separate component. This is what we call the refactoring. Okay, so far we just leave it like so. And after the title, what we're going to do is below this row, we're going to have our form. This form is the most important things in this part, because we are going to handle the post request for the new item. So as we say form, we do not need action, because we're going to use the function to trigger the form submission. And inside the form, we say we're going to have a row. And for this row, I will have a first part of the column, which is going to be a 6th column, which takes half of the row. And we want to have a margin bottom 3. And we give it this row, this form part a label. We have no need for that. We're just gonna say this is going to be the title of your post, and we're gonna create an input. We have the correct type, which is going to be text. We want to have the name of the title, and we want to have the class name, which is going to be form control, and we want to have a placeholder, and that is going to be enter title, like so. Now we have that input for this form. So how do we handle the value of it? So far, if you're going back to the page, and because we already set up the routes, if you create a post routes, you'll get to see this. We have create a new post, we have the title here, and now you get to type up things. But we want to take this value and record it as our local state variable, so we can manipulate it. And we do have that local state variable set up defined as a text, and we have to link this text to our form value. Whenever the user input something, we should link the user's input and store that into our local state variable. All right, and we know that for the local state variable, initially we already have those title, image, and category, so on. All the properties have been predefined as an empty string. So the value of it, so here we say the value of it is supposed to be the text local state variable dot title. All right, so in this way we pass our local state variable value to the form. Okay, and then if you're going back to our page, so far if you're trying to type up anything, I'm trying to key in something in my keyboard, it's not working. Why is that? Because the value of the form has been controlled by our local state variable, and you cannot control it from the outside. But how do we handle the typing? You must allow the user to type up. So that's the way to use a function called onChange, which is a built-in function for the input form. Whenever the user change a letter in the input form, we should trigger a function to handle the text change. All right. So here at the above, we write a function called const handle text change, and that one is going to equal to, which is going to be an arrow function. We trigger that out. So we leave this empty function there, and down below we say onChange is going to handle text change. All right. So in this way, whenever you're trying to type up something, our handle text change function will deal with the change. Okay. But how do we set up this function? The purpose of this function is to take the value from the user, whatever they input into the input box. So it's going to be a events handler. It handles the change events. All right. So here we're just going to say it's going to take the events, and this events we're going to do an object destructuring. So inside the curly braces, we'll say const object destructuring the name and value from e.target. E.target is the input box you're trying to target at, and you know that each input box contains the property of name and value. So here we're just going to take that target and deconstruct those two properties. All right, that's the first step. And then the second step, we're going to update our local state text variable to the new value that the user has just put in. How do we do that? So we're going to say update it with a new object dot text is going to copy the existing one, and we're going to find which name of the input the user is trying to target at and what value the user has put in, and we're going to update it accordingly. All right. So and then on the validate, which is the last property of our initial state, we're going to reset it to empty string, because whenever the user trying to type in something in the input box, any error message should move away. All right, we should give them a brand new, fresh new form for them to retype everything that they need. That's the basic structure. So only one line of code to handle the text change. But if you look at here, it pops up with an error, and that is because we're trying to handle this events, but we have to give the data type of the events. How do we know the data type of the events? It's a quite long one. I'll show you one trick. Here, for the onChange, we do not use this function for now. Let's just say you probably want to go with e, give the arrow function, and say console.log that events. If you're trying to do so, they will tell you that this is going to be an events handler. The Next.js will know it, and it tells you the data type is going to be the React.changeEvents HTML input element. That's a pretty long one. And what I want you to do is to copy this. All right, this is the parameters type. Pretty long one, huh? And we move this back because we do not want this console. We still need this function. I just need that data type colon and put it in. And now you can see all the errors goes away. Yeah, so you don't have to remember any of these. Whenever you are facing something you are not so certain of, you just try to type that thing inside your template and hover your mouse on it to see if you can get any clues. All right, this is how I get the data type for the events. All right, so that's the first thing we have to do, and handle text change. And now if you're going back and trying to type something, this is actually working. All right, this is what we call the two-way binding. Yeah, two-way binding. We bind the user input to our local state variable, and then we pass our local state variable's value back to the input form, which is the client side. So it's a two-way binding. All right. So we've done our first form, the first input. The next thing is gonna be quite simple because we're just gonna reuse the things we have built and apply to other areas. And our next input, just below this, the 6-column one, we're going to have another 6 columns. So we say, instead, what I'm going to do is to copy the entire thing, save a bit of time. So here we're going to have our second input, just change the label, which is going to be an image URL. In this tutorial, we do have the image uploads, but I did it in a way I can ask the user to put in the URL, which is not a professional way to do so because people normally don't know the URL of the image. I'm just trying to show you how to make the post request. In the future video, I will set up a project to show you how to make the formal video upload on the image upload on the multiple image file uploads. That's gonna be another project. All right, so let's just focus on the RESTful API and all the CRUD requests in this project. Do not make it super long and super complicated, and eventually you got confused. So we make the image as the input for the user to put in the URL, but this is just for the temporary basis. And now we have the image URL label, and here we're just gonna say the value of it is going to be text.image. And we ask the user to please type in your image URL. All right, so it's quite simple. That bit gets done, and if you look at it, we have the user's title, we have the image URL as well. But here, don't forget to change. This thing is going to be the image. It has to be the same name. And then we're going back. Typing has no problem. All right, so that's it. And then below that, we're going to have a new one. So copy this bit and put it down. The new one is going to be the category. So inside this category, we're going to change the name as well. And this one as well. And that's all. So last thing is going to be the placeholder. Enter your post category. So change that one to capital letter. And then going back, you will see this one got no problem. You can enter anything you want. That's it. And then the one below, just copy this bit. It's going to be the author of this article. And here we're going to say author. And I want to change the value to text.author as well. So this one is going to be enter the author's name. So I say enter, oops. If I can type, and author name. So like so. And now if we're going back, author's there, we have no problem. Okay. And the last part, we've done our form input. The last part is not going to be the form, it's going to be in a text area. So I'm going to type this up as saying this is going to be the div column 12. And want to have a margin to bottom of 3. And we also have a label. Oops. Just gonna delete this part. And inside here, we want the user to put in the brief of this post article. Again, we are designing a simple project just for the user to put in some simple information. If you want to extend this project based on your own need, absolutely go ahead and do so. And you can ask the user to fill out more paragraphs, upload more images, or put in some comments or codes. How you want to design your form is up to you, but what I'm showing you here is how do we take the information from the client side, how to convert it into that local state variable, and how do we do the two-way binding, and how do we eventually make the post submission request and update our database. Okay, so I'm showing you this entire technique, but you can build upon a more fancy project based on this. And below that, what we need is actually a text area. So inside the text area, we will have that name of brief. We actually don't need ID, but we do need a column. The column number is going to be 30. Actually, in the text.js, we have to put in as a JavaScript object, and the row we can just use 10. 10 row is good enough for me. So here we're gonna give a curly braces and put in 10, like so. And what else do we need? We need a class name for the text area. So we want it to be a class name of form control as well. And the value is going to be the same as above. So we say value, and that one equals to text.brief. And also we're going to have this onChange function. OnChange. So that one is going to be handle text change. Alright. So we have everything ready. And you can see this thing has popped up with an error because previously the events handler is going to handle the HTML's input elements like what it says over here. But now we're assigning the type of HTML's text area elements. So that's beautiful because we do need to define another variable type for the events as a union. So going back here, instead of using a simple type per data type, we're going to say we're going to use a union type, right? So here can also be react.dat change events handler. Always say change events. Let's see if we do have this one. Oh, I'm missing a angle brackets, something like so. So we're going to have a change events input elements, and also we're also going to have the change events for the HTML's text area elements. So we're going to have a union type for the events. And now if you're going down, you will see that the error line moves away. Okay. So whenever you encounter a situation for the events and you don't know the data type of it, you're just going to hover your mouse on it. Normally you will find the answer. All right, cool. So now we have our text area ready. And we're just going to add one more placeholder. Enter post brief, like so. And now if we're going back, you will see the typing got no problem. So we have successfully built our form, except that we're missing one last button, and this button will allow the user to make that submission action. So down here, below this 12 column, just pay attention to the position. We'll create a new one which wraps our button, and we say div, give class name of 12, and also we want this one to be displayed in the middle, so we say div flex, justify content center, and inside it give a new input, and that's going to be the submit. And we want to have a class name btn primary, and value of it is going to be just a string. We say post item, like so. So now we have our button. If we're going back, you will see all the things has been done correctly because we have predefined the style for the button at the very beginning of the video. And by the way, I have shared all the CSS code. So if you don't know how to change the default format or the default looking of the primary button on the Bootstrap, going to my CSS file that I shared in the link down the description and have a look, you will see that we have predefined the style for the primary button. So that's why it looks so different from the Bootstrap one. So we have all our forms. The last job is that wait until the user fill up all the information. We're going to make the put request like what we did in the postman. Remember in the previous session, we're going to write a new subject, a new object, and then submit a post request to this endpoint. Right? So we're going to do the same thing, except the data is not going to be passed as in this format. It's a JSON format. Instead, we're going to pass our data using the form collection and store those things in the local state variables and pass that into our database. Okay. So the last thing we're going to do is over here under handle text change, I'm going to write my new function, which is going to be a constant handle form submit, and that one is going to be an async function and also an error function. So here we're going to take the events as well, and we're going to trigger the function down here. So this event is to prevent the default behavior of the form, because whenever you submit a new form, the page will get reloaded. That's not the kind of thing we want. We want to prevent that from happening. So we say e.prevent default, like so. Alright, but here you get to see the error line again because it's empty, does not have any data type. So what we're going to do is to go to our form, and here we're just going to say on submit. We probably want to say e console.log, give a random function just to try to find out the data type of it, and you will see there's going to be a react.form events HTML form element. So that's the data type for this events. You just have to copy that, and here we just say e colon, put that in, and you will see the error line goes away. Okay, but here we do not want to have that console.log. Instead, on submit we should say handle form submit, like so. So that's how we're going to use this function. Okay, so all the things are ready, and we'll get to our last step of this page, which is to finalize this submission form and make that post request to the backend. First of all, inside here, we're just going to do a simple form validation. I didn't use any third-party dependency libraries to handle this, so we just write a simple one, just for you to know how do we done this validation thing in a very vanilla way. And that is going to be the if statement. We just want to test out if any of the required field has been left empty. So we say text.title, if text.title triple equals to empty string, or text.image triple equal to a empty string, or text.category triple equal to a empty string. And by the way, the author is allowed to be empty. Some of the articles will be submitted as an anonymous article. That's okay. But the remaining fields are required at submission stage. Brief equals to a empty string. So if any of those equals to empty string, what we're going to do is to set our text local state variable by saying we're going to copy the existing text, and we're just going to make the validate property to incomplete, like so. And then once we've done that, we're just going to return. Oops. So we're just going to say return. So this part means if any of those fields are empty, haven't been filled, we're going to update our local state variables and the validation property to incomplete. And this is going to pop up with an error message. Later on, we're going to build the error message depending on the validation status, and we're going to return out of this function. So basically means that nothing's going to happen. All right, you're going to have to fill up the entire form before we can make any post request to the backend. And the next job is to send the post request. Post request. So over here, we do a try catch block. In this try catch block, we're trying to make a post request to the backend API. And if it's success, we're gonna pop up with a success message. If it says any errors, we're gonna pop up with any errors. Okay. So here we say try catch block error, and the way to do so is to create a response variable, a response, and that one equals to await. We're going to await our fetch function as well. So inside this fetch, we're going to first pass in our API endpoint, which is going to be /API/post items. How do we know this? If you look at our API routes, we have that post items routes there, right? So this post item routes inside the root.js, we have that post endpoint that we built in the previous session. So this is the endpoint that handles our post request, okay? And it's under that root. So we don't have to worry so much about this part. And then the next part is just going to define the method. You must tell the method, otherwise it will take it as a get method, which is not correct. We want to use the post method. So method is going to be post. And the next thing is going to set up our headers. Normally when you handle the post request, it's better to set up the headers to define the content type because we are using the JSON, but there are some projects on this planet are still using XMLs or other type of format for the backend, which is okay, right? So, but you have to let the computer know that I'm using JSON for this one. So application /JSON, like so. And then the last thing is going to be our body. It's going to be outside our JSON. So the body is going to be the actual content for you to pass on to the backend. So this body actually represents this one. So what we passed in at the postman is actually the body, all right? Because if you look at it, I choose a body, row, JSON. So the body will contain the raw JSON format data. So this is the thing we actually passed to the backend. And we have to do the same sort of things in our front-end code as well. So we say body json.stringify.text, something like so. So we're going to take our local state variable text, which contains all of these properties, and convert it into a JSON, and then pass it as a body to this backend route, all right, using the post method. So if you're doing this way, it's pretty much the same thing as you've done over here. You put in the body in a JSON format data and send the post request to this route, all right, all the same. Okay, that's the first part of the job. And after you've done this, the message will be sent out depending on the location of the server and your internet speed and how the database is working. We're going to have to do a temporary stuff. So here we're going to set the local text variable by saying we still want the existing text, but we want to update our validate status to loading, because we say not loading, sending, something like that. All right, so we'll be sending our message. We should have a loading effect. Actually, I'm just going to use loading because we're going to have a spinning button, a spinning circle there, just loading for a while before the data gets sent out. Okay, so this is what it is. And then we're going to get the response from the JSON, from the post request. Remember, when you make the request, it'll either give you the 400 response or the 200 response or the 500 response, depending on the status of the request. We want to know if the response has been sent out successfully. So we say if, first we must create a variable, we create a variable called result, and that one equals to response.status. Okay, so we get to the response status, and if the result equals to 201, because if you look at our root, if it's successful, it should be passed back in a 201 status, right? So here, if we can have that 201 status, basically means that our post has been made successfully. And here we're just gonna say set our local state variable, update our validated status. So we say text. We do not want to touch the original text, but we want to do an update. We update the text variable to the validated variable to success. In this way, we'll have that status variable show. Okay, and this is one of the things. And because we are doing the testing of the project, what you also want to do, maybe you want to console.log that success message. So we say success, and you want to pass in that result. Okay, something like so. Oops, it should be in a comma. And if the request has been done with any errors, say for example it's going to be a server errors or the internet got disconnected during the process, so what we're going to say is set text, and that one is going to text, and we update our validate to error, and we say console.log. Here we just pass in that error, and we say that the error message gets passed in over here. Okay, so this is pretty much a template for the post request. It's quite a long code, but it's handled the job very properly. And first, you will send out a post request, and in the body we pass in our text message, our text words, which is going to be the post item object. And It also updates the status of the posting message. If it's a loading, we show loading. If it has been posted successfully, we update to success. If there are any errors, we handle the errors. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And one last thing, you see this validate gets changed across the different stages of the posting. But where do we show these things? We show this thing down here. We show these things right above the button over here. So above this submit button, I'm just copy and paste in all of these. So we're going to have a block of code that shows the validation status of different stages. If it's loading, we're going to show the message of loading. If it's any incomplete form, we're going to show please fill in all above details. Success, we show that your new post has been posted successfully. So missing a Y. And if it's errors, I'm going to show that there's going to be an error, so a server error. So that's how we handle the things, right? It's a simple validation with the response showing down below. And what I'm going to do now, since we already built it, I'm just going to refresh my page. First, we're going to check out the validation. With the empty form, I'm trying to make a post, and it pops up with an error. Please fill in all about details because we got some empty stuff there. If I fill in 2 and trying to make a post, again, that's still going to be an error because you must fill all required fields. So we try to make the sample one. This is going to be a sample post news with image URL. Let's see if I can find any good image URL there. So I have some previous one. Maybe I use this square 4 as a random route. Let's see if this route exists. All the routes has been stored in the public folder in the inside image. So here, yeah, it does have that. We have the post square images with this doggy and all the things. And these images are, by the way, all shared in the descriptions link. You can download them and use them straight away. Alright, so we just use that. And in this one, we're just going to say maybe it's going to be a culture, something like that. And the name, I'm just going to put in my name. And the brief, I'm just going to go back here. Going to one of the pages that we built already in our post. We have this one. It's going to be post items, the individual page. Yeah. Here we have this hard-coded lorem. I'm just going to borrow one of those to fill up the space. Yeah, as you can see, this one doesn't even change the line properly. So what I'm going to do is to manually remove all of this space. Yeah, that looks pretty fine for now. So let me just give a best try. We'll make the post request. Yeah, as you can see, your news was posted successfully. Thank you. And that's how we make the post request. How do we know if this thing has been successfully posted? Very easy. If it's posted, it should be listed in our post list item. So we go to our page, and this is the one that we just created, sample post news. Okay, and if you click on it, it actually takes you to that individual page that we built previously. It's quite nice, right? So that's how we make the post request. Really beautiful. And if you look at go to Postman and you go to the get all request, and now you make that request again, you will see actually this is the one that we just posted because it got my name on it, right? It has the created time, it has the date, created at, update at, with all of those time information, and also it gives you the ID. It must be from the MongoDB database, all right? I didn't create it by myself. It's the database that provides this information. All right. So now we have made our successful post request, and the next job is whenever you go to the article, say for example the one that we just built, whenever you go to the article, we're supposed to handle that update button and also delete button. So our next job is to create another event to handle the updates. We're probably going to share the same form, same kind of a form template, except instead of creating a new one, we should have now existing one information all loaded on this form that allow the user to update according to their needs, like so. So here we get into a one, and now if you go into edit page, if you look at the routes, it's still create item, but with the ID behind it after it. So if you have that ID, and that means that you are going to a specific page for update purpose, and that's a situation where we get to use this one, create a post item, square ID folder, and page. So our next job, close all this off, is to do the update job for all the dynamic routes. Let's just jump in and do it now. So to create this edit or update post page, what we're going to do is to create a boilerplate first. So RFC to have that one ready, and we change this name to edit post item. So it must be the page under the square ID folder, not the one in the parent folder. So once we have that, we're going to make, again, this one a client component, because we do have that user interactions on the DOM. And we say use client. And down here, again, we're going to import our use state hook, and also the use effect hook. Alright. So because we're editing a specific post item, we must know the ID of it. So the ideal way to do so is to import the route parameter over here. So we say params, and we have to define the data type of it. So we say params, which is going to be an object, and inside the object we do have the string ID. Okay, so now we have everything ready, and then down beneath, we're just going to create a local state variable called ID, a local variable, not state variable, just using that params.id. So in this way, the route parameter will be stored in our local file. Okay, and the next thing to do is the same as the parent folder. What we're going to do is to create a local state variable called text, because even when we are in the editing page, we're still going to handle the form input, right? So it's going to be text, set text. And this page actually is very, very similar to the previous page that we just built. It's pretty much 95% similarity. So I'm just going to build this one real quick. Again, we are using the use state hook, and eventually we're going to give a empty array. Okay, something like that. So now we have it, and our next step is to write our get data function. The differences between this one and the previous one is that in the previous post page, we have an empty form, so for the user can enter any information you like to create a brand new post. But this one, we already fetched it from the existing ID, so we must know the ID of the post, and then we need to load this existing ID information on the DOM first, and then give the user the opportunity to make a change. Alright, so we must have the get single request that will allow the user to fetch the existing post information. So we say write a function called get single post data, and that one is going to be an arrow function, curly braces, and we do the fetch. This is going to be a traditional dot method. If you want to use a try catch block error, that's going to be okay. It's the same thing to consume the promise inside of React.js. This is the ES5 method. If you're using a try catch, that's going to be the ES6 method. Both will do. It doesn't really matter the way you write it, depending on your preferences. So we say backtick period slash API slash post items slash money sign double curly braces ID. Because we already have this get single request. If you look at the postman, and we have that get by ID, if you put in the ID and make a send, it'll give you that specific item. So we use this routes to make another request to our backend to get the details of the item that we want to update. Alright, so once we have that, we say then, if we can get it, we're just going to map the response into response.json, like so. Convert it into database into JavaScript, and then we're gonna have the data set it into our local text variable, which is this one, set text and data, like so. All right, and during the process, oops, if we do have any errors, so we say catch, and we're just gonna console.log that error, console.log e.message, like so. And then once we have that item fetching function, we're just going to call this function at the use effect hook. So inside here, we're just going to create a template for the use effect, and inside the curly braces we say get single, like so. Alright, we call this function when this page gets mounted on the DOM, so we have the data ready and set it into our local text. The remaining job is going to be very easy because it's the same as the previous one. if you look at the parent page, the remaining job is going to be one is to handle the text change. So I'm just going to copy this function as well instead of write it again. So here, let's say handle text change. We're going to use it again. And the template is actually going to be, I would say, exactly the same as the previous one. So what I will do for the template, I'm just going to copy and paste again. Some people say that you are repeating yourself. Yes, correct. And the way to remove this repeating is that you wrap this template into a separate component. So for this 2 page, you can reuse this template. All right. So I'm just going to copy and paste for this demonstration purpose. But if you build it yourself, you can wrap these things into a separate component, this entire main template, and you can just import that component whenever you want to build that post page and edit page. All right. So we have this thing ready, and we do need a handle form submission function. So down here, we're going to create another one, const handle form submit, which is going to be an arrow function, and that one is pretty much the same as our previous one. So we open this up. Again, this handle form submission is going to take the events. Copy this one, and we're going to make it a async function, like so. So now, as you can see, this error goes away, but these are still having errors. That is because initially we haven't set up the value of it. So that's why this thing pops up with error. So what I will do, because in our previous page, we have this initial state variable defined, so I'm just going to export it. Export this one. If we do want to export it, we're probably going to put it outside, like so, over here. So we export this initial state variable, and inside here, we could just use it, initial state. Let's see if I got an error. Initial. Oh, I'm missing this one. It's going to be initial. No wonder. So here again, it's just going to be initial state. So we import that one from this parent folder, and we can use it again over here. So once you've done that, if you're looking at the value below, and that error goes away. So this is the rules for TypeScript. You must strictly define all the data type for each of the variables that you're going to use. This thing won't happen in a JavaScript. So if you're coming from the JavaScript background, it'll take you some time to get used to the TypeScript. But once you get used to it, your programming skills is actually going to an upper level, because as the full stack developer, I know Python, I know Java, and I know PHP. For all of these programming languages, we do have a more strict definition for the data variable type. You can't just loosely define a variable by not declaring if it's going to be a string or if it's going to be a number. And you must declare and define the data type variable before you use them. So the TypeScript has actually reinforced the power of JavaScript. It's a good thing to go. Okay, I strongly recommend you to go with TypeScript, and just to upgrade your skills to the next level. Okay, so now we have these things in the ID folder already, and we're getting the data from the backend routes, and we update the local status for the text to data. Initially, it's going to be all the empty string, but now we update it, and now we use it down here. The remaining thing is that we're going to write this handle post function, handle form submission. So what I will do, again, I will copy and paste all the things from the previous one, like so. Just copy the body of that function, and I'm going to put it over here, like so. Instead of sending the post request, we're going to send a put request here. So all these things are going to be the same. The validation is going to be the same. There's nothing to change, except we try to make the put request to the backend with the ID. Okay. So here we say we're trying to get a response with a fetch request to that backend. Instead of writing this one, what I will do, I'll cut this, give a backtick because we're going to do template literal, and then slash. After that, we're going to say $, double curly braces, we're passing the ID. Because if you look at the Postman, our put request actually takes the ID, because we need that routes parameter to find the item in the database, and then we can do the update. Otherwise, how the database would know which one that you want to update for? Okay, and the method, we must change it to put as well. The content type is JSON, that has no problem, and we're going to send a body of the JSON stringify without any problem as well. That's going to be okay. Alright, so we have all this done, and let me look at the remaining code. For the response, if you look at our API folder postman, we do have that API folder, this one root. We do have the put request pre-built, this one, in the beginning of the video. If everything goes right, the status should be 200. So what does it mean is, if everything goes right, the update is success. So we should make the result 200. So change this one to 200, and the remaining code, and for me, it's just gonna be the same, right? Nothing else to change. That's pretty much it. And you probably want to change the title. Here you say create a new post, but you want to edit the existing post. So you say edit post, and all of those things are gonna be right. So what it does is that first we're gonna make the get single request to get the existing items by this ID. Once we get an item, we're gonna set the local state variable text to the value of that item, and then we're gonna present the value in our form in this way. Once we've done that, the user is allowed to make the change to the existing one, and then after the change, we update the local status variable text, and then we make a put request to the backend, and we update the database. All right, so that's the entire logic. We should have this route ready. So we're going back. Currently, we're under /create post item. We haven't got an ID yet, so let's say maybe I want to update this one. So we're just gonna copy this route and go here /.id. Yeah, it'll give us this page. As you can see, we have made a successful request to the backend endpoint, and then we fetch the item of that ID. It gives us the title, the route, and all the things, right? So at the moment, so what I want to do is to edit this one. We change this 15 back to 11, right? And we're just gonna make a post request to see if we can have success. I make a post request, and then here it says your news was posted successfully. Thank you. And then if we're going back to our post page, you can see this item now has been changed back to 11, right? Previously that was 15. So we have done things correctly. And on a second thought, instead of the showing you news has been posted successfully, I would say your news was updated successfully, which is a more appropriate response. All right. And this one we probably want to say updating post. Yeah. So that's all good. We have done a successful job in our put request, and it's not super complicated. Again, I said that again. If you want things are not repeatable, you want to make your code dry, you could just wrap your main into a separate component and apply this main component to both the editing page and the create post page. All right. But so far, I just leave it like this for demonstration purpose. All right. So we're done with our put request, and the last thing to do, if you look at our post, we still have that random thing that we just created by post. This one looks pretty annoying because it has a very short title and incorrect size of the images. But anyhow, it just I want to remove it from our database. So what we actually need is a delete request, right? So to build up delete request, what we're gonna do, close up this view. First, we're gonna go to our API folder under postman, under square ID, and go to root. We already have the get single, the put request, and down below, we're just gonna write one more request to the backend. This is gonna be another RESTful API routes, which is going to be our delete. So to build our delete routes, we say export. It's also going to be an async function, so async function, and we're gonna name it delete. And for the routes parameter, we have to provide ID because we need to tell the database which item you want to delete. And so we say request. It's going to be the request object, and we pass in a second thing, which is going to be our programs. And for this programs, it's going to be an object. So we say params object that contains the ID, which is also going to be a string. So now we have this all the parameters set up. And the next thing is the same logic. We're just going to find the item from the database, and then we delete it. And now if everything has been executed successfully, we pass back the message saying that with the status 200. And we say const post item, that one equals to await. Again, we're using our post item module that we created in our first session, and we say find by ID and delete the second one, right? This is the Mongoose language that we use to talk with MongoDB, and then we just need to provide the params.id. If this thing has been executed, we're just gonna say return a new response. And within that, we say JSON.stringify. So we want to pass in that post item, and we're just going to set up the header, which is going to be content type, and that's going to be application/JSON. And after that, we're going to have the status code. If this thing has been handled successfully, we're going to be returned with a 200 stack status code. So that's how we're going to write our delete request. However, I want to wrap these things in our try catch block as well. So what I will do, I'll cut and we'll create a try catch block. Inside the try, we put everything in. We try to find item and delete it by ID. If this thing got executed, and then we're going to have the response with the status to 200. Otherwise, we'll be probably encounter an error, which is going to be the server error or any other error. We could just pass by, we couldn't handle this. And that's pretty much going to be the same thing as the put, this bit. So what we're going to do is just copy the previous one, this one, and I want to put it in over here. So if we encounter any errors, we're just going to say this is going to be a server error with a status code of 500. Somebody may be asking, how come you don't want to you don't try to find if this item is going to be found in the database? Yeah, you can add in this bit as well. If they couldn't find the item in the database, we'll pass back a for stage. That's going to be okay. So what we're going to do is over here, after we try to find and delete, we'll just say if we couldn't find the post item inside the database, basically means there's no such item for us to delete. And we're going to pass a response to the user saying that no item found for this ID, and the status is 404. But it's very rare for the delete request to not to find the ID, because it's not going to be handled by the user directly. If under the ID, you have the chance to delete it. But anyhow, we make the code complete. Another issue I didn't implement in this tutorial is the authorization and authentication. Normally, for the delete request, only the authorized user can delete the item they are allowed to. Otherwise, the item can be deleted by any person on your website, alright? But the authorization and authentication is another topic which takes a very, very long time to implement. We're going to have to discuss about the JSON Web Token and all the settings. I will leave those discussions and introductions in the future video. In this video, we'll just leave the delete as a unauthorized delete. So basically means that anyone who sees this website can delete it. But this is not the proper way to handle. We should have the middleware function to take that all of those authorization code, and we implement that middleware function inside the delete before the delete can be executed. All right, I'm just telling you the proper way to do so. But for demonstration purpose in this project, we just write our delete code like so. Okay. Yep, that's our delete routes. So once we have this, we are okay to create a few more buttons. So what we're gonna do, close this root, and we're going to our create post folder, and we're going to that page one. Hang on, it's supposed to be the postman folder, post item folder. We're going to that individual page, this one. So here, before we actually finalize this page, we should have some buttons added, like what we did in our original project. We should have 2 more buttons added down the paragraph, which allow the user to delete and update. Right now, we are ready to add on these 2 buttons and create all the relevant functions. So over here, we're just gonna add a few more things inside our single post. The proper place to do so is actually below this paragraph. And we say enter, create a new line. We wanted to have a div flex. So we create a flex div, and we want to have everything aligned in the center. So we say justify content center, and we want to have a bit of a gap between each button, so gap 4. And inside here, we're going to include our delete and our editing button. So the delete one, we're just going to create an anchor tag, and we delete this href, and we want to say give a class name, and that is going to be button primary. And inside here, we're going to use the bootstrap icon to handle it. So we go to bootstrap icon, and we find a trash bin. Let's see which one looks better. You can do anything, but I'll just try this one. Trash. I'll put that in and give a proper name, like so. So now we should have the first button. And next, we're going to include a second button. The second button is going to take us to the create item page by ID, which is the editing page, right? So instead of using the anchor tag, I'm going to use a link for the second button. So we say link, import it from the Next.js. And here we're going to have the href inside it. Give a backtick. We want to take the user to create post item and slash money sign double quote is ID, and the class name is going to be the same. So we say btn hyphen primary, and this one we're going to use a pen to indicate the update. So we go to icon and we say pen. Yeah, it does have a pen indicate those. Which one looks better? This one. So we put that pen in, and don't forget to change your class name. So all done. The second one should take the user to that individual page for the editing purpose. If we're going back to our project and we just opened up one, we now have this 2 button there. We just take this button. It takes me to this page for editing purpose, which is okay. Yeah. And try another one. This one. Click on the pen. It takes me to the editing page without any issues. All right. So that's all working. The only problem is that with this anchor tag, it's supposed to trigger the function to delete our item. So at the very above, what I will do, I will write a function to handle this delete event. So we'll say here I will create a const handle delete post, and that is going to be a async function. Async error function, and it will take the ID as a parameter because we need to know which one you want to delete. Okay, so down beneath, since we have that function, we're just gonna add in that function in the anchor tag by saying on click equals to handle delete post. We have to trigger this function using the arrow function as well because it takes the parameter. So we say like that, and the ID, we're just going to pass in the ID of the item, which is going to be the ID. Okay, so we pass in that item ID, and this ID will be passed as a parameter to find the specific item in the database and got it deleted. So that's how we handle this thing. We saved it. Back to our function, we'll create the body of the function. To handle the delete request, it's actually quite simple. We just need to write a try catch block. First, we give a comment by saying delete post request, and here we say try catch, and in the try, we just need to write a response. And that one equals to await. Again, it's going to be a fetch method. fetch, and inside here we provide the routes for it. The routes is the one that we just built in the API folder, remember? This one, /API /ID /postman /ID, right? So we say that /API /post item /money sign ID. Okay, so now we have that post items. I spelled it correctly. Once we pass in the routes, we have to put in the header. So the method comes first. The method is going to be delete. This is very important. If you don't tell if the method is delete, it wouldn't be able to handle it. And then we're going to tell the headers. The header is going to be an object, which is going to be the content. Content type is going to be application /JSON, like so. And then the last but not least is going to be our status. So not here, below this one, what we're gonna do, we don't have any body here in the inside this curly braces, because delete, you just need to tell which ID you want to delete. We don't have to pass in any content in the body, right? So, but we do need a status, so we say result equals to response.status. Once we have that, we're going to write a if statement by saying if that result triple equal to 200, basically means we have done a great job. We're just going to say console.log curly braces success, and we're gonna show that result as a second parameter. It's supposed to be a comma. Once we delete the item, supposedly this item doesn't exist, we should take the user back to the parents page, right? Not let the user stay on the existing page, because once you delete it, this item should go on. Say for example, once you delete it, this article is gone. There's nowhere for user to stay. You should take the user back to the post page, which is the previous one. That's the more appropriate behavior of the web page. And to redirect the user, what we're going to do is to import a router from Next.js. So we're going to say at the very beginning, we'll just write here, we create a variable called router, and that one equals to use router. So we're going to import from the next.navigation, not the next.router, this one, the second one, okay? Use router, import out from the next navigation, and then you assign this router to a router variable. So down here, once it's done successfully, you are allowed to use that router to redirect the user to the page that you want them to. So we say router dot push, and just give a route's name. We want them to go back to the parents page, which is the post items. Okay, and if we catch any errors, we're just gonna console.log that error, like so. So all done, and now we are supposed to be ready to handle that delete event of this one. And there's no spelling mistake, I guess, right? So let's go back to our current project and give it a try. I reload the post item page. We do have this random item that we created, and I just go into it. You can see that spinning button loads for 2 seconds, and that's all good. You can take us to the edit page without any problem. And if I click on this delete button, let's see what's happened. Delete. It takes us back to the post page without any problem, and you can see this one is gone. That means our delete request has been sent successfully. Our database removed this item according to our request. Alright? Okay, all good. So that's the one last step for us to handle. And as a brief summary, if you look at our API endpoint and the post item folder, we do have that all the CRUD roles. This is the get by single. This is a put request by ID, delete request by ID, and this one we have the get all request. This is the post request. So we have built 5 RESTful API endpoint to achieve the CRUD, which is the get and also the update, create, and delete. Okay, so in a brief summary, this is a full stack with all the RESTful API required for the small application. All right, so now we have finalized our post page, our create post page, our home page. The next job is going to provide a UI template for the about page, but that's going to be a very quick job, even though we haven't built that page yet. And then we're going to also create a template for our contact page with that form thing as well. And after that, we're going to build our footer to make our page look more complete. And then we're going to deploy our project to the virtual server and to see if it can be working remotely online. All right, let's just continue to build our project.